We are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Ron Ferris. My pronouns are he, him, and you are welcome here. In all your wholeness, your triumph and failings, your patience and grace, all your intersectional identities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here even if you're not here. So we could say hi to our Zoom people who are not here but are here. Thank you for coming from wherever you are today. And as this is the last day of Lesbian Visibility Week, we particularly want to welcome and shine on our lesbian sisters. We hope you feel welcomed here and celebrated here. Your presence is a joy beyond measure. Also today, less joyful, we bid fond farewell to our music director, Jay Thomas. We will sing through our tears. Be assured that until Jay's successor is identified, we will be led musically here by some folks within the congregation and some guests as well. But today we will celebrate Jay with some cake and hugs after service in the small hall. Also after service in here, there will be a presentation regarding male survivors of a particular kind of childhood trauma that is deep and good and necessary work. And then there's now. This service today, right where you are. And this reflection that you'll hear later on is the last in what in my mind is a loosely bound 5-part reflection series that started way back when with some thoughts about how the technique used in oral knowledge systems may open avenues to deeper communication with the world, and we can learn some of those techniques. I next shared my attempts at a deeper communion that were flummoxed by scale until I found myself discipled to a dandelion. So that was the second sermon. Following that, we reflected on the power of individual intention held in community and how that can create a lens through which a deeper communion with the world emerges. And subsequently, we initiated our Fire Tenders program, wherein the magic has in fact already begun to percolate. And then last time I was here, we heard the invitation of the Green Knight, the face of nature, the invitation into the great game, who suggests that a deeper communion with the world has much to do with an integrity based on other interestedness. And that brings us to today. So here we are, there's nowhere else to be. You might as well take a deep breath. Fully get here. Set aside whatever to-do list you may have had before coming. Let's take another deep breath. Relax into this moment. As we move deeper into our service, I'd invite you to reflect on why you are here. What is your purpose for this time that we are creating together? What is your intention? And when you have found and named that intention, I'd invite you to house it in a gesture. Inscribe your body. Inscribe your body with your intention for your being here today, so that you might return to it throughout the week. And you might even share it with one another over cake after the service. It is good to be together.
Hello, my name is Andy Walker. My pronouns are he and him. I am a member here at All Souls, and I'm a member at large on the Board of Trustees. When I was a young boy, just a few years ago, I was taught to be as giving a person as I could be. My parents always demonstrated their generous spirits, so I was taught by example more than by instructive spoken lessons. I have tried to carry these lessons in my heart and pass them on whenever I can. I brought these lessons to this church when I first came here in 2006. Yeah, I've been here for a while. I still remember that moment. I stood outside on the sidewalk next to a sign which is no longer there, but which told me this was All Souls Unitarian Church. At the time, I only really focused on that last word, and that word mystified me. I hadn't attended any church in the 10 years prior, but here I was next to a sign which said, "That's where I brought myself," on that day. As I stood there, I literally said, "Andy, what the hell are you doing here? You are not a church-going person." And then I went inside and I found a community. I found a place where I belonged, a place that needed someone like me. Now, the me of that day would never have imagined what would happen next. I like to tell people that I am an atheist who is very involved in his church. Thank you. That generally gets a good laugh, but few know the meaning behind it. In my time at All Souls, I have been an at-large member of the Board of Trustees twice. I have helped with the tech parts of the church many times. I have taught children in RE. I have been a regular, excuse me, getting over a cold. I have been a regular nuisance at the annual auction, encouraging people to bid high, bid early, bid often. In short, I feel I have given a lot of myself to this church, but as I see it, I'm giving back the love it has given me. This community has helped me through the toughest emotional time of my life. As a giving, empathetic person, it is only natural I should give back as much as I can. That's the thing about giving, you see. Whenever you give to a community, especially when you're giving back as well as you can, as well as you receive, you do get a strong sense of belonging. There is joy in giving, but there is great love in giving back. It has affected me in ways I cannot put into words, except to say that it is one of the most positive experiences of my life. You now have the opportunity to give back to the church. Let us show our own generous spirits as the plate is passed around. Instructions for giving will be on the chat and on the screens.
Y'all remember the first question that I asked you from this pulpit back in August? Do you remember? What do you yearn for? Close. Close. What do you yearn for? So there was a period in my life recently where what I really, really yearned for was crickets. Where I was living in those days, up in the Pacific Northwest on a busy street, I never, ever heard crickets. I missed hearing that rhythmic staccato. I missed their reminder that I lived in their field and they lived in mine. Now, to be sure, a single cricket chirping at bedtime is a curse beyond mortal reckoning. But a chorus of them feels different somehow. That feels like acceptance. I don't know why it feels like acceptance, but that's what it feels like when they're serenading me in Mass, or each other, really. It's like the peaceful end to a day well wrought. And there is somehow an invitation to connection in cricket choirs. And I missed them very much. So I tell this to you now, much as I told it, about 2 years ago, to a newly made friend on the morning that he and I and 13 other religious professionals were about to enter into a ceremony catalyzed by psilocybin at a retreat center in the Dutch countryside. Now, I don't know why missing crickets occurred to me that morning, but as we waited to enter the ceremony room, I leaned over to him and I said, "I miss crickets." And he received my yearning with a gentle, sympathetic smile, which was, at that moment, just what I needed. So over the course of the few days prior to that, we had become dear to each other, all of us, all 15 of us or so, like a family of a kind, forged by religious geekery and spiritual seekery, complete with all the dysfunctional functionality of a family. The bond had formed almost immediately and had been reinforced by practices intended to prepare us for our encounter with plant medicine. And here I'm going to give a caveat. It is my hope today to relate to you my experience that day and explore what I took from it. It is not my intention today to argue for the benefits or hazards of the responsible use of psychedelics. There are plenty of resources out there for that. And you should take care to utilize them before embarking on that path. What I would say is that one ought not jump from a plane without training, accountable guides, a drop zone, and a parachute. And so it was that in the lead up to our ceremony, we had gone through medical and psychological screening, intention setting, meditative and embodied exercises that approximated or resonated with that ceremony. And the medicine itself was procured with care from accountable sources, administered legally in that country, as it would be in this state, under the auspices of Legare, a legally incorporated nonprofit. So the Legare facilitators had endeavored to create a mindset and a setting that was safe and accountable. That said, just as it is true in this room right now, there are no ironclad guarantees of safety. So it wasn't perfect, and we learned some lessons. But it was good. Significantly, and I cannot emphasize this enough, the psychedelic, the mind-changing journey began days before any plant medicine was ingested. The whole week was filled with deeply meaningful signs and wonders secured by our intentions and held in community. It was reinforced by the practices that focused on those intentions. And I spoke to that aspect some weeks ago about intentions held in community and the power that they have to frame how we engage with the world. At any rate, the morning of the ceremony, we were as ready as could be. And as we entered that sacred space of our ceremony room, I found myself missing crickets. It was a rectangular room, wood floors, white walls. A panoramic window looked immediately onto a small meadow bordered by trees. And this is the same meadow in which I found myself discipled to dandelions some hours later in the day. Now, throughout the week, we'd contributed stones and poems and branches and crystals and pictures and prayers to make an impromptu altar in the middle of that room. And today, cushioned mats and white blankets were arrayed in a circle around that altar. It was holy space. We were invited to recall our intention, and my intention for that week and day and epoch was to learn how to become home. And as you ought to know by now, my hypothesis is that if we felt truly at home on this earth, we would naturally be in deeper resonance with it and tend to it better than we have. Such a feeling would naturally yield a sense of belonging that I think plagues us moderns by its absence. Belonging feels like love. Its felt absence creates a sense of mutual othering that has led us to the brink of extinction. So how to be home, deeply home, how to responsibly cultivate a sense of indigeneity is a question of utmost importance to me, and I think the world. So having connected with that intention, I was delivered the medicine. It was gross, but unless they are sauteed or on pizza, I do not enjoy the taste of fungi. With that, I covered my eyes with the eye mask that they had given us, arranged myself comfortably on the mat, and I waited. In the interim, the room filled with music from a playlist generated by Johns Hopkins University for their investigations into psychedelic therapy. So it was heavy, excuse me, it was heavy with huge Eurocentric choral music. The music was immense. Thunderous chords of Brahms and Bach, tidal waves of German choirs borne on brass and ivory loomed and crashed. Tumultuous staircase oceans of black and white keys tossed me like a boat on diabolical waters. So the medicine had taken effect. At the same time, other narratives and a rather heavy-handed narrator wove me into and out of that music. I was shown how people in the room with me that day were a menagerie of other people in my life story, as though the same spirits, the same angels and demons and people and temptations and embraces, the same forces and lessons kept showing up in my life, like a pantheon. I was in the room with the gods of my life, which was both fascinating and irritatingly redundant. But it's like they say, that's karmic affinity for you. No one says that. Other narratives paths have merged as well, each one offering a choice. I could engage or delay. And when such a choice arose, I heard one of two things that guided my decision. Either I heard psychotic, Euro-orchestral ecstasis, or alternatively, in the midst of that, I heard, guess what? Crickets. And so it became a thing. Do I engage in this potentially painful, potentially playful, but undoubtedly arduous curiosity that has arisen? Crickets meant yes. They became my guide. They carried me to the pantheon, and then a brief engagement with my late father where we lovingly agreed that he'd already been him, and so I didn't need to. Nor worry that I already was, which was very like him to say. I heard crickets when the path arose around how best to care for my family. Excuse me. And finally, in a synthesis of Jiminy and J.S. Bach, I was cricket encouraged to finally and fully confront this freaking wall of music. It was inarguably gorgeous, overwhelming, awe-inducing, yet I felt that music is deeply oppressive. I imagined all the resources used to make the instruments, the clothes, the buildings, the culture required for that music. It would not in its time be heard by the labor who extracted, shipped, and created the brass and wood. An intractably elitist pleasure. The Grateful Dead, it was not. Rather, it represented a pinnacle that was available only to those also at the pinnacle. It was obviously a medium and delivery system for the divine, yes, and it worked. It was divine. No argument there. But what kind of divinity? It was an experience procured by, reserved for, and by and large available only to the elite, and I was increasingly enraged by it. It was incessant, John Hopkins. And here's an odd thing. That same fury, that same experience was felt by nearly everyone in the room. It was remarkable in the post-journey integration sessions how many of us felt that oppression, felt the extraction and the implied hierarchy and domination underwriting that music. I can still appreciate that music, but it left a mark on all of us. So maybe at this point it's worth remembering what mushrooms are and do. They are the fruiting body of mycelium, an underground network of tentacled filaments, and their role in an ecosystem is manifold. They decompose, recycle material, they form networks of distribution that convey not only vital resources, but also information. Mycelium forms a neural network underground. It's like a brain, or maybe more accurately, a gut, given the recent insight into the neural network in our guts and the digestive properties of mycelia. So break down, decompose, distribute, recreate, communicate, interdependently co-evolved with everything else to engage specifically in this manner with us. Break down, decompose, distribute, recreate, communicate. There's a reason the psychedelic renaissance is happening now. So the music is overwhelming and the critique of it is clear, and though I didn't know it in the moment, shared, and I just wanted out. Not out of the experience, I wanted outside. I wanted to counter the extractive music of Domina with the earthly music of birdsong and breezed branch. I wanted this so badly with every fiber to escape the history of empire and enter the solar punk present, to return to the green. However, this was not allowed. One of the learnings of this experiment was about the power of covenant. We did not have a covenant, and thus some boundaries were crossed that ought not have been. Less harmful, but not helpful to me, was a facilitator imposed prohibition on leaving the room. And you could imagine, right, how a handful of facilitators might be nervous about trying to manage 15 tripping spirit nerds in the woods. But maybe we could have come up with something, besides no. For having hailed a facilitator to request a breath of fresh air, that was her reply: no. I'd removed my eye mask to communicate with her, and based on the kinetic Van Gogh spaghetti that was her face, I knew I was nearing a peak moment, which made my confinement seem not only a doubling of the oppression of the music, but also a lost opportunity. All I wanted to do was go ask some questions of a tree. I'd found this tree earlier in the week, and it had a big old knotty bulb about my head size, so I figured we might be able to relate. But it was not to be. I remember feeling that as a tragedy and wondering about my intention. How was I supposed to find out how to be home if I couldn't consult with home? But as I folded myself in defeat, stuck on the mat, a good boy, and as the music crescendoed and crashed all about me like a breaking wave, home came to me. Somehow, the din of Baroque villainy faded to silence. And in that silence, the cricket song returned and carved out a cylinder of quiet, surrounded by sunlit, leafy green. And in that cylinder of peace, my intention returned to me. How do I find home? No more music, just space. And in that space, a very direct reply. A voice, in fact. A voice answered my question. How do I find home? I asked. Give back. Not a whisper, but quiet, in contrast to the musical orgasm all around me. The hush of that message was almost anticlimactic. It was powerfully quiet, like the space between lightning and thunder. Give back. And then, I kid you not, the voice that said, give back, added, duh. It is astoundingly simple, after all. And so I've told you this whole trip tale with its winding viaducts and dead ends and revelations to finally deliver this super simple message to you. How do you be home? Give back. So simple. Its implications are profound. And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? How do we save our planet, find belonging, meaning, relationship, identity, love, and sustenance? Give back. Duh. After the journey, we did some formal and informal integration work. We told our stories. Incredibly, our stories began to interweave with one another. With our neural gates still quite wide open, our experiences blended and became one large story. I told them about my cricket guides and what a coincidence that was, in light of the conversation I'd been having before the journey. To my dismay, no one else had heard them. With a laugh very much like that one. We all chalked it up to the medicine. But then, when I got to the part about give back, crickets. And this time, everybody heard them. It was spooky, wild, and beautiful. A blessing. And so this is good. I got a direct answer from those earth mind messengers, these destroyers, distributors, recreators, and it made perfect sense. Duh. My instruction, hard won and grace given, was give back. So this method of revelation is not for everyone, but the revelation stands. And I pass the instruction on to you now. It was not meant only for me. Give back. But like any revelation, it creates as many questions as answers, and I've been struggling to discover what it looks like to give back. Give back to what? To who? How? I'm haunted. And this phase of my ministry will be to dance with this question: how should I give back? And maybe you will be haunted now too. Give back. Give back. Duh. As we leave this sacred time and place we have created together, easiest benediction ever, let's give back. Duh. Also, let's drown our sorrows in delicious cake.